I bring David up. I want to tell you, when I was introducing the speakers, I am so well acquainted with David that it was easy for me to just say his name because I know him so well. But I realize that many of you do not know all the work that he does, and so I'm making it up to you, David. David is a very important member in Los Angeles. He participates in the strategic planning, which we have now in effect in our union. Always pushing for a very proactive reform agenda, always working with everyone to build a social justice union, to build up our communities and our profession. David Rapkin.
Thank you, Ingrid. And good morning, and this is an amazing display of solidarity. I want to say some things about that. As Ingrid said, I come out of PEAK, Progressive Educators for Action, and United Teachers Los Angeles, where I've been on the E-Board, our board of directors, for the last 3 years. And we've got an ongoing significant electoral success, as well as some losses in UTLA. We've got 4 out of 7 officers that are PEAK endorsed folks and people that work with us. 3 of whom are here today, Brother Juan and Sisters MJ and Arlene. Glad to be here with them. Many E-Board members that we won in the last election. But at the same time, and what I think we need to focus on today, our work is in building an independent rank and file group, and that's still in its early stages. So I'm honored to be on a panel with progressive leaders and activists who are part of what I consider a growing insurgency, not just against our ruling class political leaders and politicians like, well, Michelle Rhee or whoever it is, but against leaderships, some of our own union leaderships who for too long have given up without a fight. And looking around this room and knowing how many more people back home we represent, those leaderships and the politicians that they often apologize for need to hear footsteps, because these are some very loud footsteps that are beginning to develop. And it's not just because we can win office, and we can, obviously, but because, even more importantly, our politics, I think, are going to lead the largest rank and file upsurge and insurgency that the U.S. labor movement has seen in decades. And I think we're starting to get a sense of that. In LA, we've got some serious challenges, and I'm just going to briefly touch on a few. And I like, after Wisconsin, thinking about those challenges more as provocations, and that's what they are. It's more than our share of attacks. Layoffs, which I think are far ahead in LA of where they are in some other places, and the class size increases that are inseparable from layoffs, charter takeovers and privatization, surreal union-busting lawsuits. We'll be able to talk about some of the specifics in the breakouts. But what I think that we really need to talk a lot about today is, what exactly is it going to take to stop them? What's it going to take to really stop these attacks? One answer is that it's going to take a massive fight. That's very clear. And we've got an amazing glimpse of what that could look like in Wisconsin recently. And we owe everyone who led and participated in that struggle a huge debt of gratitude. And the struggle was led in many respects by the rank and file in a way that was quite unexpected. Wisconsin also gives us, and I don't think this lesson is generalized enough around the country, a real taste of what it would look like to win. I think a lot of the people who were in Wisconsin knew that we might have been able to win this struggle. This is the kind of fight that it's going to take. But to be perfectly honest, and that's absolutely what we need to be if we want to win, this is a period in which we're waging some hard fights and still losing ground. And in some cases losing ground very rapidly and very significantly. To take UTLA, we desperately need to transform our union organization, because it's absolutely not designed for what we face right now. I mean, people can talk about their specific locals, but UTLA was designed, for some episodic fightbacks. We had a somewhat successful, actually very memorable strike in 1989. didn't involve what a strike would need to involve today. And largely, our staff spends its time servicing members and grievances, much or many of which would be better fought out as struggles to build site-based power at the sites. And they don't spend their time on organizing. So for one thing, we need, and someone, at least one other speaker mentioned, that we need to move from a service model of unionism to an organizing union. And that involves everything from having an organizing department, which I'd love to hear more about how that works in Chicago, real political research, especially member training and political development, and the building of site-based power, some of which can come from the top of the union that leaders can take initiatives around, but most of which is going to come from below. In LA, we're already putting up, I would say, a good fight, but it's not in many cases a winning fight. One of our schools, Clay Middle School, was simply given away to Green Dot charters, and there's an important community-based fight, and this is where our community partners come in to fight back to take that school back. But generally, we've had rallies, including a very important one at the LA Times, school site picketing, a big citywide chapter chair meeting, punctuated by cries of strike, strike, strike. I mean, the militancy is there, but when it came down to trying to build a one-hour strike in the midst of the RIF crisis that we faced several months ago, it wasn't that the leadership was the main roadblock to having that. It was that many of our leading seeming militants, some of our key members and the people that they represent, weren't ready to take the risk of having even a one-hour strike in the face of a fairly draconian temporary restraining order threat that echoed something that we had several years ago. So what I want to finish on is that our success relies on our ability, I think, to integrate fight-back tactics with, as a number of people have already mentioned, Nathan touched on this, a strategy that involves front and center our vision for reform. I think that's controversial, and it's one reason I hope we debate it today. It's understandably controversial, especially with many of our most militant activists. Why is that? I mean, we're aware that this is in the context of our national affiliates dancing with the anti-union reform devil. I mean, it's very easy to talk about reform and have that be hijacked by people who talk about fake reform specifically for the purposes of destroying not just the teacher union movement, but the labor movement in general in the United States. So, to finish, I think our member engagement requires that we have a meaningful strategy for participation. It may be organizing charter schools, but it also means opposing them on the basis of their failure to educate children and replacing that with a vision that comes from us about what educating children really looks like. We in LA have developed a very detailed version of our own evaluation and support plan. I mean, they have a punitive and VAM, value-added idea of what evaluation should look like. We need to come back with what a real model should be. We're developing a reform committee in the union and taking many other initiatives that link our fight back to reform, because one danger today, whether progressives are in power in our locals or not, even if we control our locals, is that that's not going to be enough. We have to engage members in the public around a vision of what schools should look like that motivates them to get involved and stay involved. And so what a winning strategy needs, formal leadership can, in many key cases, play a decisive role, as we all know. It's not the basis of our power. And as Wisconsin shows, huge struggles can erupt without conscious preparation, but if anything, that highlights the need for more serious preparation than ever. Our contract campaign, which UTLA is now going into the summer and fall dealing with, is a huge opportunity. We have to see it as an opportunity to project our vision of public education at the same time as we engage our members in strike preparation. They need to see those two things as absolutely inseparable, and building and transforming our organization, starting at the site level, as based on motivating our parent and community partners and a lot of our members who aren't engaged around what we think public education could look like, and then what it's going to take, what kind of a fight it's going to take to defend that.